Hi.
They'll come up. Yeah.
Good. I guess I just want to get quick history or kind of where we started here. Farm.
Yeah.
Susie and I moved up here in Wisconsin in '99. Bought this farm. We got like 35 cows, tie stall barn, common thing. The previous owner did a little bit of grazing. We bought his cows and the tractor. Before we lived in Illinois, I was in the hog business with my brother. Anyway, we moved up here. We started with that 35 cows and kind of built everything around since then. Today we milk about 237 cows. We'll start shipping organic here in 2014. Pretty much all grass, long term since we started. Took us about 2 years to seed the farm down, but really complete new renovation. We haven't done any since then. Big thing we do is no-till. How the farm is kind of divided down. We got 230 acres that's fenced right around here. About 140 acres is in a 40-year rotation. What that means is first year we come in, we drop in about 8 pounds of red clover, a couple pounds of white, and about 8 pounds of meadow pasture. And then that's usually in the spring, as soon as the ground is firm enough to go, like green up. Occasionally it gets too wet, too early, too long. We might have to wait after the first crop comes off or something like that. We do that too, which is fine. But then the idea is we stay off with our liquid manure or any bedding pack manure for the first 2 years. And then year 3 and 4, we hit them really hard with manure. So the idea is get the legumes a chance to come and go, and they get more winter hardy. It's actually a study that Jeff Brink did here a few years ago. That's kind of when we started it. I feel like we got a pretty good success at that. The thing we do is it'll be the year 3 in the spring there, if we need to, we come in with an annual ryegrass and make sure all our holes are filled. And especially if we start dumping on a little more manure, we can take advantage of that. One thing we did is the low milk price. Like this year, instead of going with the meadow pasture organic that's pretty high priced, we just did everything in annual ryegrass. Annual ryegrass we use is a green spirit from Berenberg, and usually 50% comes back the following year, so it's not completely gone. And we had really good luck with that. It's the same thing we use in year 3. Key to it is, we get it in early. We always try, if paddocks get ahead of us in the summer, either we clip or take a mechanical crop off. Talking about that a little bit, actually we usually start clipping the first week in June, with the idea, we talk about the summer slump, we want to make sure we get good grass by end of June. When we get into the 4th of July time frame, we got clip pastures coming into the rotation. Because usually when we start clipping, the weather doesn't allow us to clip behind the cows all the way through, so if it gets too wet, then we just skip paddocks until it gets dry enough again to do it, which makes it good, because when we come the next rotation, you got some old paddocks and the young paddocks, so we go half and half day, half there, half day there. So that works out pretty good, and that also gives us an opportunity to, if we need to, put liquid manure in. Manure-wise, the home place kind of gets covered, right? Kind of same thing when we do the no-tilling. And as soon as the ground is dry enough to get the tankers on there, because the road limits being on, that's as far as we can go. And that works out good, and we can go a lot of places then. When we start rotating cows, it gets kind of harder to get the liquid manure out there because you got not enough acres for the tankers to come in, just for a short time. So that's kind of how we work our rotation. Renovation, we throw around the ideas of annuals, like the sorghum sedan or whatever. The biggest thing I struggle with is I don't have any tillage equipment. Second, to hire a custom guy to come in just to do 15 acres is a struggle. Sometimes we only got a few days, so really it's dry enough to do it. I just don't do it because the cost of it, and then, like I said, the timing. I can take half the money I would spend on an annual, put it in the ryegrass. When we do a no-till, and in the spring, do another 30 acres. It takes us 4 hours, 3 hours, and we're done. And it's done. All our cows freshen in the spring. If it comes to that time of the year, the last thing I need is another project. Usually it's good. Leave it alone. So that's kind of some of the thoughts. There's probably more potential out there, more volume that could be gained. But it's not only that. In the spring we got to do that. Now the sorghum is going to come off, it's going to die off, so we got to run a no-till drill across again in the late summer, either put a winter wheat in or rye or whatever, and then the next spring again. So we tie down. Those are the things I see. It's good now, but I'm looking down the road and impact it has. And that means, take that out of rotation, because I was saying earlier, one part of the farm is on the 40 rotation, and then that's about 140 acres out of the 230. And then about 50 or 60 we rotate our wintering areas. Some are calves, some are bred heifers. There we usually run like every 5th year we feed on that acres. So that's kind of how our fertility program works there. We come in the spring with the no-till drill, with string little ryegrass. Those fields just to clean it up and get it all down. Some of the areas where we cannot get to it, we just run our heifers across and graze it real tight. That's how we control the weeds. And then of course the low-laying areas we don't even touch. We just use the heifers and dry cows. That's it. There we use a little bit of lime if we can get the trucks down in it. But that's it. So anyway, I feel like we can keep the tight sod of the no-till. It's very simple and gives us a way to kind of control costs, especially in times like now. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg and still get fairly good production. I like the annual ryegrass, or we call it green spirit. It's more than annual. It's kind of neat. In the spring you got all your quackgrass and stuff. It really does go well. The ryegrass kind of creeps along, and then in the summer you get some moisture. Even this part of country, even in July, August, I feel like it does good if you get the moisture. And now in the fall it can freeze, so when it gets warm day, it's still growing. So for us it works well. We run, on our grazing acres, we run a cow an acre, so we got plenty of manure to feed it. So I feel like it was good.
Cost-wise, that's still your cheapest grass, pretty much.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to establish, even I can grow it.
And you're establishing only in perennial pastures.
Yeah.
The annuals just don't pencil off for you. Tilling up ground, taking out.
Yeah, it just doesn't. We got clay ground. It's not very well drained. So spring it takes a long time to dry up. And like I said, the other thing is too to corral somebody to come in when I need to do it. To come to 15 acres. What the hell? You're the last one on the list. And then you got to seed it the whole night. That all has to happen sometime in the June time frame, usually.
Well, and then reseed it again.
Yeah, what are you doing in June? As soon as you get a chance, you think, hey, just get done calving. And you got, calves are just coming off milk soon. Breeding starts to start. I feel like we're better off, doing the simple way, because then we're done. We can move on. That's, part of that too fills in with the operation, I guess. So I would say we can walk out there. I show you some no-tilling we did where we had our calves last winter. This paddock has like 5 strips. It's divided about in 5 sections. We move it across the field. Now we just see the whole field, but we can take a look at that, and then we can walk maybe around, make a loop, see some of them that be coming out next spring, and then maybe we can get far enough down. One we did this spring. Huh?
Did you say what kind of no-till feeder you're using?
Currently it's
Great Plains.
Great Plains. That's from the county.
And that you have or you own?
We rent it from the county.
Rent? Oh, But you're able to get that anytime you want in the spring?
You know, that's kind of the problem. We limit it to 2 days, so everything's got to happen now. And we're usually the last ones on the list. It's not, you know, guys with the drier ground usually go first.
Okay.
And we're kind of usually the last ones.
That hasn't been a problem as far as getting.
You know, it's the timing. It gets to be, and I'm lucky enough. I got a guy who comes in if I need a tractor drive. I can park him on and then
Okay.
have at it. And, you know, that's kind of for us to make it happen. It's probably more the limitation of the labor.
So in your rotation, are you, okay, so you got how many acres, 200 something?
Yeah, 230.
Divide that by kind of 4, you know, how that's letting you.
Okay, now of the 230, 140 is in that 40-year rotation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, of course, then the other 90, either it's low ground or gets out wintered on. Now,
I
the
see,
stuff that
I
gets
see.
out wintered on, that's where we have every 4 to 5 years we come back in the same spot to feed again. And of course, that means in the following spring, the end of seed there.
So a little bit less than, what, 40 acres a year is getting reseeded?
Yeah. Now, of course, if we come around in the spring, we had a wet fall, and we plug up a paddock. Well, you know what's going to happen. We're just going to run it across there.
Sure.
But it kind of helps me in the fall, or even during the summer, if it comes down to plug up a paddock. Well, let's plug up the one we're going to do next spring. If you have to make a choice, we're definitely not going to plug up the one and just put a bunch of seed down.
Right, if you have that choice.
So that kind of helps us too there. And also with the tankers, the worst case scenario, if something didn't work out perfect, you can come back then.
You mentioned that if you couldn't get that no-till drill, in answer to your question, that you would take a harvest, you'd harvest the crop and then drill right
Yeah.
after harvest.
So that's sometimes,
Second option.
yeah, that'd be planned. You know, if it's too wet, you know, like this past spring, it's wet, everything takes off. If we didn't get there on time, and sometimes it doesn't work out. I mean, you gotta have a place to park your cows too when you no-till. Then some just say, heck, well, just wait and do it after then. It's maybe drier then. And there's times no-tilling, especially this past year, or this spring here, no-till, then it really creeped around all summer. We've seen the rows, but it didn't take off until after in August when we got
Too
started.
dry, you think? Because you had plenty dry this summer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
It just never, and that was a challenge too then. Usually we need that stuff to come up to choke out the weeds, so we had a lot of ragweed. That was more of an issue. But what, I mean, it's just one of them goofy years, but once we got the moisture, really, you can tell, it did its job. But this is kind of one of them things we got to work with. I guess.
Then. So go to the very base of the plant and you'll kind of just pull up something from the root. Oops, I pulled a clover. I don't even know the difference.
good sample.
And they're not all going to be the same then, but this started off in the perennial ryegrass parts of the world, where they're using it to target when to start and stop grazing then. And they count the number of green live leaves then, and we can give half credits to half-formed leaves or older leaves that are still half green that haven't been eaten all the way and are still healthy then. So it's okay to count halves, but it should equal up to 3 full leaves before we say that plant has enough energy built up in its roots and crown to tolerate another grazing event. Now the one thing they talk about, if you look this up concerning perennial ryegrass, is that in perennial ryegrass, when it gets to the 4th leaf, the oldest leaf begins to die off and decline then. Whereas for us, a lot of our cool season perennials, we can go up to 6 green leaves and it'll still be good quality then. So as far as a maximum goes, we don't really worry about that as much then, but we definitely want to be looking for that minimum of 3. If this was a solid bluegrass stand, that was maybe 6 inches tall, we'd bend down and pull up tillers and we'd find 3 leaves there. And so at least from the plant standpoint, it could tolerate a grazing then. So that's kind of, that's that's what the use of this is versus talking about heights then. So anyway, in the last couple of years, I've sort of known that that was true, but as far as actually like bending over and pulling up tillers on different farms, I've actually started doing it. It's pretty interesting then what you find. Sometimes you get surprised at what you find. It's not what you think it is then. So just as you walk around, maybe you see a different species, maybe just see what it's doing then. You know, the orchard grass versus the rye versus the bluegrasses.
So does fertility or does soil health, I'll use that word, have any bearing on it?
It does. So if you take you know the same a tiller of the same species from different fertility areas, you may have 3 leaves on the poor fertility that may only be 6 inches tall, whereas on high fertility, you know, it may be 10 or 12 inches tall then, and that's where you get your improved tonnage then too. You know, with the same amount of time and development by the plant, you get much more tonnage then. So it definitely matters then.
That's got the open chamber because it's just so much easier to work with. But we don't want to have any of, if there is a batch layer, we don't want to have that part of the sample. So, you know, just kind of kick that stuff away and get down to the mineral soil. When you take these samples, you know, this isn't an auger, so you don't have to auger it in and auger it out or anything like that. That's as much as you need to do. And then you come up with this core, and we're always going to start from the soil, from the surface of the mineral soil going down. And so on these fields here, Peter, would you work these up and reestablish them eventually, or are you just going to keep no-tilling? Keep no-tilling. So in a situation like that, we don't want to necessarily sample the entire depth of the topsoil. We probably want to go down like 6 inches. So from the surface, going down 6 inches, and then we're going to discard the rest of that. And for every field that you want to have a test done on, you want to have between 12 and 15 of these cores like this. So we're not going to gather these from areas like the lane or the headlands, or if we're walking across here, if we see old back furrows or something like that, or, you know, it's kind of hard to see now because everything is growing so great, but if you see a spot where there was a cow pie or a urine spot or something like that, anything that's out of the ordinary, you know, don't take your samples from that.
So